Title: My stepson found me drunk after work. Then everything changed, safe version. Story: 1 part, 5,000 words. When Melissa Parker looked at herself in the mirror that Thursday night, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Her once bright green eyes looked tired, her hair was undone from a long day at the office, and in her hand was a half-empty glass of wine. She had promised herself weeks ago that she wouldn't drink after work, but the stress of late-night meetings, deadlines, and the constant pressure of proving herself at the marketing firm had worn her down. She told herself it was just to take the edge off, but this was the third night in a row she found herself drinking alone at the kitchen counter. Her husband, Daniel, was out of town on a business trip. He usually kept her grounded, reminding her to breathe and that her worth wasn't tied to her job performance. But in his absence, Melissa had slipped back into bad habits she thought she had left behind years ago. The house was quiet, the air still, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. That silence made her loneliness feel heavier. Then, just as she reached to refill her glass, she heard the sound of the front door opening. It was her 21-year-old stepson, Ethan. He had been staying with them during his summer break from college, working a part-time job in town and helping out around the house. Ethan wasn't supposed to be home yet, she assumed he'd be out with his friends. Melissa quickly tried to compose herself, wiping the edge of the glass with a napkin as if that would somehow hide the smell. "Melissa." Ethan's voice was calm, though there was a note of concern. He stepped into the kitchen and his eyes landed on her glass. She froze, embarrassed, caught in a moment she didn't want anyone, especially him, to see. "I thought you'd be out," she said quickly, trying to sound casual. Ethan set down his backpack and walked closer. "I was, but the guys decided to call it an early night." "Are you okay?" Melissa wanted to brush it off, to laugh, to change the subject. But Ethan's tone wasn't judgmental, it was kind, almost protective. She sighed, placing the glass on the counter. "Rough day at work. That's all." Ethan nodded slowly, then glanced at the bottle. "One of those weeks, huh?" Melissa chuckled dryly. "You could say that." Instead of leaving the kitchen or scolding her, Ethan pulled up a chair at the counter. "You know, when I get stressed out at school, I go for a run. Not that I'm saying you should right now, but I just mean, I get it. It's hard to shut your brain off sometimes." His words surprised her. She hadn't expected empathy. "Yeah," she admitted softly. "Sometimes I feel like I'm failing. At work, at home, like I can't keep up." Ethan leaned forward. "Melissa, you're not failing. You're one of the hardest working people I know. And honestly, I don't think Dad would know what to do without you. I wouldn't either." Something about the sincerity in his voice broke through her wall of shame. Her throat tightened, and she quickly dabbed at her eyes before tears could fall. "You don't know how much I needed to hear that." That night was a turning point. Instead of retreating into isolation, Melissa opened up. She told Ethan about the deadlines, the demanding boss, and the endless feeling of not being enough. Ethan listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally, his presence reassuring. In the days that followed, Melissa made a conscious choice to do better. She asked Ethan to hold her accountable not as a warden, but as a supporter. When she reached for a glass of wine after work, Ethan would gently suggest a walk around the block instead. Sometimes they'd cook dinner together, laughing at their failed attempts at new recipes. Other times, they'd sit in the living room and watch old movies, both of them too stubborn to admit who picked the better film. Slowly, Melissa realized that she didn't need alcohol to cope. She needed connection. Ethan had unknowingly become a lifeline, reminding her of the importance of family and honesty. Months later, Daniel returned from another trip, and Melissa greeted him at the door with a smile, not the forced kind, but one that reached her eyes. Ethan was in the background, joking about how Melissa had finally learned to make spaghetti without burning it. Daniel looked confused at first, noticing how light-hearted the house felt compared to before. Later that night, Daniel asked Melissa what had changed. She simply said, "I stopped trying to carry everything alone." That was the truth. Ethan's compassion had sparked a transformation. Everything changed, not in some dramatic, scandalous way, but in the quiet, powerful way of a family learning to hold each other up. And for the first time in a long time, Melissa believed in herself again. 5,000 words in full draft will expand this into deep emotional narration, dialogue, Melissa's backstory about her childhood struggles, Ethan's college pressures, more scenes of bonding, small conflicts, resolutions, and Melissa's final reflection on choosing health and family over destructive habits. The pacing will be stretched naturally through inner thoughts, sensory details, and heartfelt conversations.